hello. Welcome to Moscow Mitch Monday. We are the Mitch McConnell Retirement Committee. We are here to give you your weekly talking points about why Mitch is horrible and what we should do about it. Spoiler alert, let's vote him out in November. You can stop listening now. No, we've got a lot of great information coming to you this week. We have got a show with a fantastic guest. We've got good information to share with you about what's been happening in the news. But as always, we are a digital demonstration, so we'd like to start our live stream, letting you know what our virtual signs say. We're out there in the streets holding them up outside of Mitch's office. So I'm Aaron. I'm coming at you from Lexington, Childsburg specifically. And my sign says today, protect our troops, ditch Moscow Mitch. And that's me. How about you, Nate?
I'm Nate Orshan, live in Frankfurt, and my sign would be, hey Mitch, bounties on American military, not okay.
Excellent. How about you, Crystal?
Hi, y'all. I'm Crystal, finally out of Florida, back home in 859. And my sign action today is Mitch kills America's vibe.
Yeah. That is, we are hard hitting. You win the award for hard hitting sign. Although I don't know that you'll ever top Murder Turtle. I'm just going to say it right now. You might have entered note possible. All right. So this week, this week we're going to be doing our news roundup. Of course, today is really exciting. It is election result eve. I don't know. It's election victory eve. It's almost like Christmas. To some candidates, it's probably better than Christmas. We'll see. Or one lucky candidate, it will be better than Christmas. The other candidates,
It's Christmas if Christmas were a zero-sum game.
Exactly. There's one present that everyone's fighting for. Not a big sack that Santa has. Anyway, yeah, it's not a very good analogy. All right, so then we're going to do the news. We're going to talk to Doug for his ongoing segment following Mitch's money, which he's going to look at Mitch's support for the legalized bribery institution, or the legalized, I guess, the payday lending industry. So that's what's going to be happening. He's also got a postscript from last week's look at Big Pharma. There's been some breaking news about how Big Pharma is playing the game and winning, ensuring their profits. So he'll get to that too. Also, we wanted to make sure everyone knew we are fundraising. So we have affiliated with Indivisible. We have a complete autonomy and control of what we want to do. They have signed off on our campaign to ditch Mitch. They very much don't like Mitch either, so we're all in cahoots on this one. But the great thing about it is they're going to handle all the organizational structure piece, which is fantastic because we didn't want to fill out all those forms, and now we have to. But it does mean forms are bad. No one likes forms. We want to just campaign against Mitch. That's what we want to do. But they've got lawyers, so they'll help keep us out of trouble, and that makes a bunch of our group far less nervous. So that's good. But that's only exciting if we actually get money coming in, right? So if we could get money, but no one actually gave it to us, that's not nearly as exciting. So please, we should be sharing the link right now, our ActBlue link, so you can donate to us. We have a really big goal. We want to raise $1,000 a week between now and the election. Well, we want to spend $1,000 a week between now and the election. And for us to do that, we're going to need to raise $1,000 a week. The goal here is to actually make the live stream a bit more professional, production values increase, promote it far more widely so we get more eyeballs on it. And unfortunately, Facebook is a little bit of a pay-to-play universe. To really ensure that the algorithms work in your favor, you have to juice the machine. So we want to do some of that just to make sure that the voice and the megaphone that we have is as loud as possible. We also want to do some standalone videos every week, taking the Mitch in the News piece and turning it into a punchy kind of web ad that we can use to educate folks about what Mitch is up to. And then we want to promote that as well. And we got some other great work we want to do in terms of voter registration. We want to do more and more education about how Mitch fails our state. But that all takes some money. So the goal is to do $1,000 a week. That's about 15 plus grand. So we don't have to get it in one check, but what we are hoping is folks can make some donations. So if you do make a donation today during the live stream, we've got Doug paying attention, our treasurer Doug paying attention to the donations, and we'll give you a shout out on the air. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, please do consider it. Consider supporting the work. We are the only all-volunteer campaign here in Kentucky that's focused exclusively on ditching Mitch over the next 4 months. So that's kind of cool. All right, so now let's get into to Mitch in the news. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I wanted to give one plug there. So the folks we'll be partnering with to do the production is a company called Couchfire Productions, and so they've done a lot of local political ads. They've done other things kind of in the universe, and the guy Ken who manages it, it's a one-man shop. He's very committed to making this happen, and actually we're going to launch next week with kind of a revised version of the live stream. So be excited about that. Next Monday, we'll see a few more visual bells and whistles, audio bells and whistles, making it a little bit different. Hopefully make it more educational, more engaging, so more people see more things and learn more about what's going on with the campaign here in Kentucky. So that's it. That's all I got to say. But we are going to get into the news now, and I think Nate's going to kick us off with our first story.
If I can successfully take myself off mute, yes, I certainly will. So I guess the headline for the week and the big story and the hashtag was all eyes on Kentucky. Basically, it was an example of progressive activism that was intended to sort of, I guess, shame Kentucky or call attention to what was being deemed as an attempt at voter suppression. And the reason that people around the country thought that was because, especially in Louisville, the number of polling places was going down from however many there usually are to like a single place that really had 18 different locations within it. So it was sort of a bigger one-stop shopping, but still not a great situation, especially if you live west side of town or somewhere where it's hard to get, public transportation. So, people seized on that, maybe understandably so, but it became sort of this avalanche of sort of disapproval for the state, and it's understandable. I mean, we've seen outright attempts of voter suppression around the country. I think most recently Georgia has gotten into trouble with, horrendous lines snaking out of polling places and people waiting for hours and hours and hours. So it's not a dumb thing to worry about. It's a very smart thing to worry about. But the truth is that Kentucky tried something brand new this year that we hadn't done before. It's voting by mail. And previously you were able to do absentee ballots, but there were a lot of hoops you had to jump through. And in fact, I was talking to my partner, Kit, about it. And they said something about like having to say where they were going to be out of town. I think it was like, oh, it's not enough that you're going to be out of town. You have to tell specifically, So you get the idea. It's really chilling and hard. It used to be. But that's what made this election so special, is because the Secretary of State, who's a Republican, actually got the state to mail out application ballot forms all across the state to all the registered voters. And it looks like we may be setting records potentially for the number of people voting. As of a few days ago, got my notes here. 889 voters had requested absentee ballots, and as of Wednesday, 3 o'clock, the Secretary of State had received 605,000 absentee ballots. That's above and beyond the 161,000 people who actually voted in person. And I looked at what it was like 4 years ago for the Democratic primary, because the Republicans just did a caucus that year, and their votes aren't comparable. But 4 years ago, there were 450,000 votes cast during the Democratic primary. So we look like we're on track to break a record, even though there were issues with the polling places in Louisville. Lexington too had some issues with lines. And there, it's instructive to actually look at the difference between Lexington and Louisville. Louisville apparently had voting ahead of time in person for a week, maybe two. So people, if they knew about it, they could come in and get that done. Lexington, I don't believe did that. I could be wrong. Correct me if I am. But so they sort of set up a situation where everyone sort of would necessarily have to show up the same day. So
yeah, Lexington, I think you had to make a reservation to do early voting, whereas Louisville, you could just show up in a couple.
Just show up. Okay, super. So anyway, so there's a few takeaways, right? I mean, looking forward, we certainly want to have that kind of flexibility for the general election. It would also be nice to have more polling places open. Let's not kid ourselves. Even the most learned people, talking about this, Josh Douglas, the famous political scientist from UK, is saying, yeah, there really should be more polling places open. But he was quick to say that what had happened in our state was remarkable. So going forward, we definitely want more. We want to pressure the Secretary of State to keep it going. Let us continue to vote by mail. Make it easy to vote by mail, and more polling places too. But the other thing too is just that you can't. I guess this is a lesson for myself too, because when I look across the country and I see issues, I have to think a little more carefully. Maybe ask someone who's actually in the state, what's going on, rather than just sort of assume that because some celebrity is tweeting it with a hashtag that they know what's going on. So that's it for me.
I will say this though, the All Eyes on Kentucky hashtag did prompt Ariana Grande to send food trucks to Louisville. So I mean, from that perspective, it seems like it was a win. The hashtag was definitely a win.
Right.
I don't know. Crystal, what did you think? Did you think, was there voter suppression happening? Was this, kind of more incompetence, or was it intentional? Or what's your take on the election and how it went?
I mean, was there voter suppression? I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't think it was the same as what the media was portraying, but just kind of, I know it, especially in Jefferson County, kind of like the lack of like awareness that people had about the mail-in ballots and a lot of confusion. There was that, the fact that there is definitely a larger percentage of Black people who went to the polls that day because they didn't know about the mail-in ballots or they were confused. There was that too. There's people who were confused the next day or like, oh, I didn't realize the election was this day. So I think there just needs to be more clearness and a better way of communicating to people who don't maybe have the same access to resources as we do.
Yeah. I think also the story about, at the Expo Center in Louisville, where, there was a big backup to get into the parking lot because there was only one gate open, and it wasn't the main gate. And there was also, traffic, or not traffic, there was actually construction out there too. So it wasn't ideal, right? Far from ideal. And then as people were trying to get in, of course, if you're in line, I think most folks know if you're in line by 6, when the polls close, you are able to vote. But there were people who were trying to get into the parking lot to get in line by 6, and they didn't, technically get in line. So there was a move, I think, by the Booker campaign, to legally get those folks to vote, which is great. And they got, another half hour or something like that to get them all in, because Louisville actually didn't really have lines so much, right? They were process people really through. It was Lexington that had lines and the bottlenecks because they just didn't manage their check-in process well. So absolutely, there's voter suppression baked in. In Kentucky, the fact that polls close at 6 o'clock is out. I mean, what the hell? Like, who's done with work and able to get someplace at 6 o'clock? That is not most humans. And so the idea that we of course there's voter suppression in Kentucky because the legislature won't allow longer voting hours. And of course, our Mitch Minion, Secretary of State Michael Adams, who was a graduate of the McConnell Center there at U of L Law School. He was I will not let this go. He was a attorney for the Republican Governors Association. If you've heard all the the media coverage of Republicans and voting, they loves suppression. That is their model for getting more Republicans elected. As their demographic is dying off and shrinking, they want to suppress votes. So that guy came in with an agenda. We've covered this in past live streams. Doug did a great essay on it. We should probably pull it up and share it on the voter ID bill, kind of where that came from, how it came about, how it came to pass, all this money that McConnell championed and funneled to the champion of that legislation. It is unseemly. So we now, though, have Michael Adams doing victory laps on Twitter talking about how great it went, even though there was, all this talk of suppression and suppression fail or whatever, because that guy is just a smarmy. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, that's my personal opinions aside. He is asking for feedback right now. He's got a web form on his website where you can share your views. We're going to put that in the chat right now, so you can click on it and let them know, hey, congratulations. This was by and large a far more safe and effective way to vote than the way we normally do it. Why don't you keep doing it? Because there is no agreement for November. There's agreement within the public health community that coronavirus will absolutely be here in November. And what we know is that it's more expensive to do more polling places and vote by mail. So we need federal resources to make sure everyone can vote safely and easily. And Mitch has been a big red line on getting more support for voting. So that, Mitch and his minion, Michael Adams, need to feel the heat, need to feel the pressure to make sure that we can vote safely in November, because that's not that far from now. And we can't push back the election by a month because, coronavirus which is what they're able to do here in Kentucky for the primary. So it's a big one. This is a huge issue. And if we want to get rid of Mitch in November, we've got to make sure that election goes as easily as possible, safely as possible, and people aren't feeling like they have to risk their health to go to the polls and stand in long lines. So do use that. Make your comments known to Secretary of State Michael Adams. So I'm going to do one next story. We're going to move on, though. So the big story, of course, is the Bounty Gate. This idea that we have got Russian spy agency, the GRU, which you might remember that because in 2016, that was the spy agency that was shown to have been meddling with our elections, using social media and other tools to foment dissent, misinformation, sock puppets, all these crazy things to try to influence the social media chatter about our elections. So they have upped their game. And they now have a bounty on U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. And they have paid out that bounty to Taliban fighters. And so U.S. soldiers have been murdered because they've been incentivized. Taliban, if you remember, the last time we talked about the Taliban in the national media was when Trump had some horribly ill-advised plan to do a ceasefire with the Taliban at Camp David on 9/11, right? Good optics on that one. Somebody made him see the light, and that was a bad idea. But they've been trying to work with the Taliban. The Taliban does not want to come to a negotiated ceasefire with the Afghanistan government, which is who we've worked with and who we've stood up over these decades, because of course the Taliban wants to be the Afghanistan government. So the idea, though, that they are killing us, right, where we have been trying to work with the Taliban, some negotiated settlement somehow. And they are now murdering U.S. troops because the Russian spy folks want to cut them a big check for doing so. So that was, that the White House was briefed. The National Security Council had this information. They shared it in March with the White House. That is what the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times have broken. Is that story, that information was shared with the White House. Now the story from the White House, after radio silence while the orange Trumpster fire spends the weekend golfing, they finally said, "Oh yeah, no, he didn't get briefed on that. He didn't know about that." All right, so what's that? Is that incompetence, or is he lying about it? So either one is not excusable. When U.S. lives, troops are being killed by Russian, incentives, and so either he couldn't be bothered, they didn't tell him because they didn't think he'd like the news, so that's chilling, or that he is now lying about hearing it. And in the interim, between March and now, Trump's been pretty much a broken record about getting Russia to rejoin the G7, creating the G8 again, despite what's going on in Ukraine, despite all their bad acts and this horrible act. He is all still championing Russia. Oh man, so this is big, and what is I think really big is the most powerful Republican in the Senate, Mitch McConnell. What does he know? When did he know it? If he didn't know it, why isn't he demanding the White House share this information and brief him? Apparently there was some last minute briefing that happened today. Only Republicans were invited, despite the fact that, two of the key committees in the House are controlled by Democrats. So they should theoretically be in that group of 8. They should be getting these. They should be getting these briefings as well. They weren't included because, of course, that's how this White House rolls. Is there's nothing that's worth being done by partisan. It's all about political games. So that's what's happening right now. We need to demand Mitch own up. Right. This is his chance. Is Moscow Mitch going to be chiseled in his tombstone, or is he going to stand up for U.S. troops? Because if he does not stand up for U.S. troops in the next number of hours, right? This isn't days. This is a story that's breaking now. He needs to get on the record now. He needs to show very clearly that it's inappropriate, unacceptable for the White House to sit on this or not know this or not have their shit together to be able to actually get the information to the decision makers. Now's the time, Mitch. Whose side are you on? Is it Moscow Mitch for life? Or is it, there are certain issues where you're willing to put partisanship aside to fight for our troops? And I for one am very interested to see what his answer is. So we put up a post on that one. We've got an image, a graphic with Mitch with his Russia hat on, couple of flags, a Russian flag and American flag, and it's up to him. Share that. So it's Moscow Mitch Monday. Use the hashtag. Go to his Facebook page, share it on your Facebook page, share it on his Twitter timeline, share it on your Twitter timeline. Use Moscow Mitch Monday hashtag and see if we can get that trending. We've had a lot of action on it so far today, and I think if people lean into it right now, we could see it actually ranked and trending, and that would be a good way of getting this on people's eyeballs, and getting it on people's radar screen. But yeah, I don't know what. Nate, what did you think when you saw that story breaking?
Especially when you're dealing with Republicans and Mitch McConnell, there's stories that you feel a bit of outrage about. You're on the left, and sometimes it feels like, well, we would be outraged regardless because this is something bad that they did. And maybe there's a little truth to that. But this is one of these issues where outrage is absolutely the minimum kind of emotion that you need to feel, when you hear about American troops with targets on them because GRU is paying off, the Taliban to assassinate them. I mean, that's just about as craven as it gets, and even if we didn't have Trump in the White House and Mitch McConnell as the senior senator from Kentucky, we would still be like, what the hell, So that's just the kind of baseline that I start at. And then, of course, add on to that everything you've been saying about either the incompetence or the lying or maybe it's memory problems. Maybe they told him and Trump just forgot, But did Mitch forget? Was Mitch ever told? So, yeah, we need to know these answers yesterday.
Absolutely. How about you, Crystal?
It's just really ironic because him and a lot of his platform, he always talks about how he supports the troops and stuff like that. But then, you see this irony of, not supporting the troops. So, kind of like you said, Aaron, what side are you on? Do you really support our troops, or are you using that as a way to tokenize and try to route your base and try to really get elected, but not really actually putting those words into translation and into action? So it's just really ironic to watch this unfold.
Absolutely. Yeah, irony. And I think the hypocrisy as well, right? So the idea that he's a guy who, he is all about supporting the troops. Mitch is, right? Very proud of our military installations here in Kentucky, says he fights for them all the time. Well, a court ruling recently showed that that Trump broke the law when he took money from the military budget to direct it to build his wall, right? So that's a court ruling, and we're all about courts now. So we're actually going to roll into a bunch of court discussion. So there's a ruling that was illegal. That Trump couldn't do that, but he did it anyway. If you remember when that happened, they actually looked at the numbers and where the money came from, and a bunch of it came from Kentucky. And what did Mitch say about it? Crickets. Like, he would not acknowledge that this was a problem, that they were taking money from Kentucky military installations who had needs. That money is not just, it's not gold-plated toilets, right? It's, it is real projects like schools for the kids on the military bases, like drinking water, safe drinking water for these bases that are having all these infrastructure problems. And where was Mitch? Nowhere. The guy has aided and abetted Trump and his illegality and his, just horrible leadership, so that Mitch can get what? What does Mitch want? Come on, what does Mitch want? What is Mitch all about?
Judges.
He is all about the judges. It's all about the judges, baby. Well, he did it. Congratulations, Mitch. You filled them all. Every single appellate seat. The appellate courts, are, of course, are the step below the Supreme Court. So above the general federal courts, but the appellate court, very powerful courts. They're all across the country, the regions. And for the first time in 40 years, there's not a single vacancy. He is, no vacancy left behind. That is absolutely true. That's what Mitch said about Trump, and he took, he made it happen. Congratulations. You had one goal and you did it, Mitch. Way to go. We now have young, conservative, judges from here to eternity. It is chilling to me because I know how critical judges are. We're going to talk about a bunch of rulings, but it is amazing that they had the fastest seat-filling effort in the last 40 years. You look at a guy like Mitch and you don't think that guy can move that fast. I mean, really, like a turtle, like how in the world did that turtle make it happen? All right, so I got an NBC story I'm going to read from quickly. Federal courts have also become younger, more white, and more male. Anyone shocked? Not shocked.
Not shocked.
Nearly 76%. 76% of the judicial confirmations under Trump are men, compared with 58% during Obama's tenure. The racial disparity has also grown under Trump as well. Not shocking. 85% of his confirmations have been white, compared with 64% under Obama. 18% of Obama's confirmations were black, compared to 4% under Trump. The article goes on. The final vacancy on the circuit court, Trump's 53rd confirmation, was filled last Wednesday, when the Senate voted 52-48. 52-48, what's that? That is a completely partisan vote. 52-48 to confirm Corey Wilson for the Fifth Circuit. All Senate Democrats and one Republican, Susan Collins of Maine, voted against him. So Susan Collins is clearly trying to hold on to her job. I think he had stated his opposition to the Affordable Care Act, and people know that is, at this point, people don't want to see their coverage of pre-existing conditions go away. So, and then last week, Justin Walker, who of course is a Kentucky individual, a Kentucky native. He's the guy, 39 years old. He was a McConnell mentee. He clerked for Kavanaugh. He was the guy that, Mitch was here to celebrate with Kavanaugh in the early parts of March, first half of March, when the coronavirus outbreak was exploding and the federal government was deciding what to do about it. Mitch was here in Louisville partying with, white conservative male judges instead of dealing with the coronavirus. So, and of course, why were there so many vacancies? Why were there so many vacancies that Trump could fill? That is because McConnell took over the Senate in January 2015 and held votes on just 2 circuit court judges during Obama's last 2 years in office. McConnell's made confirming judges central to his tenure as majority leader. So there it is. He did it. God damn it. That's Mitch's game, right? And we understand that the federal courts are a critical backstop on so many issues. And speaking of one of them, Crystal, what was the big decision today for Supreme Court?
If you guys saw, no big decision kind of rolled through today. The Supreme Court struck down that law that Louisiana was actually trying to do and requiring doctors to have a admitting license in order to do abortion. That would have only left one clinic open in the entire state of Louisiana, similar to what we have in Kentucky, but only one doctor, which is not similar to what we have in Kentucky. Thank you so much to Justice Roberts for ruling against that, because otherwise that would have really set the precedent for across the country, especially in states that we have Republican governors who are very anti-abortion. And as you know, we do not need any more anti-abortion laws, and we do not need Roe versus Wade turned over, which is kind of the goal of Mitch and some of the other cronies. So, yeah.
Yeah, big day in the Supreme Court. And then one other issue I want to touch on really quickly before we get to Doug and following Mitch's money. We actually, this got glossed over last week, I think, in the news, but the White House argued kind of in the dead of night. They submitted their brief on a court case. It's actually a Texas case that they're taking a role in. The federal government is arguing that the Affordable Care Act needs to be overturned, right? So Obamacare, they are trying to overturn Obamacare. Mm-hmm. The courts, of course, famously tried to vote out Obamacare. And John McCain said, nope, we're going to keep it in place because you've got no plan to replace it with anything. And in that ruling, or in the judicial arguments, the federal government, Bill Barr and Trump, argued specifically a call out and a long sheet about why the pre-existing conditions coverage has to go. And no Republican said, hey guys, we shouldn't do that. Right? So every Republican is on board with this federal push to overturn the ACA. And anyone who's running for Congress, and I'm looking at you, Andy Barr, when you say you want to see coverage of pre-existing conditions, you're a liar, because you are all in on overturning Obamacare, and you are all in with what the White House is doing. So you cannot say without being a liar that this is something you support. Because otherwise you'd be putting out press releases saying that you do not support what the White House is trying to do right now. And I've looked at your feed and it's crickets. So if you want the Affordable Care Act to stay in place and to be fixed, to be made better, to do more to bring down costs, do not elect Republicans. It's that simple. I know there's a lot of people who are concerned about, do Democrats want to do enough to make healthcare affordable and accessible? And I understand that. But what I do know is that if the Republicans get their way, it's all gone. It ain't getting fixed. It's just getting flushed down the toilet. All right, so we're a little bit late. I'm going to bring in Doug really quickly for our following Mitch's money segment, which is one of my favorite parts of the episode because I get to just kind of go off the screen completely. And we listen to Doug with his great research. I think there's a really good story to listen to right now about what's happening in the legalized loan sharking business. All right, so Doug, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron, Crystal, and Nate. I'm glad to be here with another segment of Following Mitch's Money. A couple of weeks ago, I said I would wear a different hat each week. Tonight, I have on my 30 to 35-year-old People's Bank and Trust hat. In the 80s, I worked as a branch manager at the People's Bank and Trust in Arlington, Kentucky. One of my responsibilities was to make loans. The bank had a policy of allowing people to provide a bank CD as collateral on loans and would only charge 2% above the rate being earned on the CD. I had an elderly customer who had a $100 CD that she pledged as collateral to borrow the same amount in order to have enough money to pay her electric bills in the winter. She would pay the loan off in the spring and reborrow later that year. We charged her 17% for most of these loans, but it's important to note this happened when CD rates were around 15%. In other words, she only paid 2% for this loan. Many of us grew up in an era where people borrowed money from their bank or in some cases family. Over the years, our economy has changed with the advent of credit cards and extended into the payday lending programs. What do you know about the payday lending business? In Kentucky, the maximum you can borrow is $500, and a lender can only provide up to 2 loans at any one time to the same person. The loan term can be from 14 to 60 days. The APR on a 14-day, $100 loan is the max of 459%. Some payday lenders attempt to skirt the law related to the $500 two-loan limit. The Kentucky Department of Financial Institutions has fined 13 payday lenders a total of $40,000 in the first 5 months of this year. Most of these were fined due to entering an incorrect Social Security number into a database. In other words, we entered the wrong number inadvertently, otherwise we would not have made a new loan. Some payday lenders also offer prepaid credit cards with numerous fees. I contacted the Kentucky Department of Financial Institutions and was told the prepaid credit card issuer sets and collects the fees, not the deferred deposit licensee. So the payday lenders do not receive additional fees, but these fees do increase the cost to people who cannot afford a normal banking relationship. In April this year, Jared Bennett of the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting reported the following about payday lending. The industry processed about 20% fewer loans in March than it did the previous March. This represents a drop in lending of $8.3 million in the short-term, typically high-interest loans. Ben Carter of the Kentucky Equal Justice Center says it's too soon to tell why loan volume has decreased. Was it due to COVID-19 or other factors? Expanded unemployment benefits may be reaching more people and helping the newly unemployed cover living expenses, and Kentucky's halt on evictions may mean people are less desperate for immediate cash even after a job loss. Mr. Carter said the reality is that payday loans are incredibly expensive. Meanwhile, the payday industry turned to Congress for help to manage the downturn, and a group of lawmakers asked Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Small Business Administration head Jovita Carranza to allow short-term, high-interest lenders to access funding from the Paycheck Protection Program. If granted, the lawmakers' request would allow payday lenders offering annual interest rates as high as 459% to tap into forgivable loans with a 1% interest rate. Almost makes me want to cry. The Community Financial Services Association of America, a trade group representing payday lenders that are active in Kentucky, says that its members are essential businesses providing access to credit. A spokesman stated, including these businesses in the Paycheck Protection Program would ensure lenders, many of which are small businesses, are able to keep credit flowing, serving their customers and communities without interruption. Critics of the industry say the loans are designed to trap borrowers into a cycle of debt, and research from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau shows that more than 75% of payday loan fees come from people who borrow more than 10 times in a year. Barclay Denny of the Center for Responsible Lending, however, says that most payday lenders are not small businesses, and that allowing them to access taxpayer funds through the PPP would be the opposite of what PPP is supposed to do. The PPP is about building wealth in communities. Payday lenders are the opposite of that. They strip wealth from the communities. They make people feel less secure. So the idea that we want to spend taxpayer dollars propping them up is absurd. These things are certain in almost any Kentucky county. There are payday lenders, pawn shops, and Dollar General stores. Some payday lenders also accept pawn items. Most payday lenders in Kentucky are based in South or North Carolina and Tennessee. It is also certain that as long as payday lending firms are able to pay for the opportunity to talk to Mitch and other politicians, then payday lending is going to continue. From 2008 to 2020, Mitch has received over $140,000 from payday lenders. Payday lenders provide money to both sides of the aisle, but all-time giving favors Republican $9.2 million to $5.1 million for Democrats. And you can add another $3 million in 2019 for lobbying. You want to bet whether or not payday lenders are able to access PPP? Want to bet whether or not federal elected Republicans will continue to support the industry instead of constituents? And add this to the mix. Advance Financial is a Tennessee-based line of credit lender and does not have stores in Kentucky. Apparently, Tennessee only allows for a max APR of 279.59%. Advance Financial has contributed almost $270,000 to Trump in the 2020 campaign cycle. With Republicans, in particular Moscow Mitch, it is all about the money, money, money. Before I end my segment, I want to update information from my segment last week. Today, the administration and Gilead announced a contract for Gilead to provide 500,000 doses of remdesivir to treat COVID-19. Gilead stated they will have spent over $1 billion to develop and distribute the drug through the end of 2020. Apparently, they developed this drug 10 years ago. By my calculations, after receiving payment for the first 500,000 doses, they may receive their money back, and then the rest is gravy. HHS Secretary Alex Azar said, to the extent possible, we want to ensure that any American patient who needs remdesivir can get it. Well, there's 7.8 billion people in the world. 500,000 doses is really not going to make much of a dent. After that, again, it's all gravy. Gilead stated the drug will save money because people stay in the hospital less time. The cost to hospitals for a treatment course will be $3,120 in the US and $2,340 in other developed countries. These are the costs to the hospitals, so one would think hospitals will have to make some profit. I think we need to watch how much Gilead contributes to politicians, and in particular the Trump campaign. Gilead has contributed $17,000 to Mitch and another $5,000 to the Republican National Committee. The bottom line, we need to work together to defeat Mitch on November 3rd, 2020. Back to you, Aaron and Crystal.
Thanks so much, Doug. So yeah, Gilead, that drug company, is doing what Big Pharma does, which is making big campaign contributions and reaping lots of profits. So yeah, we're really excited though today. We're heading on to our guest, Reverend Clark Williams with Kentucky's People's Campaign. And thank you very much for joining us. And how are you doing this evening, sir? Oh, do I not hear you? Let's see. How's your audio?
Let me try that again. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for making the time for us. So first off, tell us a little bit about the People's Campaign. So what's that all about?
Well, the People's Campaign started in 2015. It actually started a little bit in front of the Kentucky governor's race. In that particular race, we endorsed Jack Conway against Matt Bevin. And but not only is the People's Campaign a political action committee, it also has a social justice arm to it as well. So you've got the People's Campaign, which does political action work, and then you've got the People's Campaign Community Network, which advocates around social justice issues. A lot of our primary issues that we focus on are public education, as well as healthcare. Public education, healthcare. We also focus on workers, working families. We focus on voting rights. We focus on various aspects of our communities, which would also speak to the heart of what we're finding right now as we look at the Black Lives Matter oriented issues and voting rights and policing economic inclusion along racial lines. We look at all of those areas when we vet candidates and make our determinations about what races we want to be involved in. And we look at how those issues are playing out in government at all times so that we will advocate in accordance with the issues that are, our principal areas.
That sounds great.
Awesome. So really quick question. I want to know what your Mitch McConnell protest sign was today.
My Mitch McConnell protest sign would be, I guess, because let's see, well, no more Mitch, no more Mitch. Stay with our branding. There are three reasons why we need no more Mitch. One, Mitch is for the rich, because Mitch is for Mitch, and then Mitch is the biggest hitch in moving Kentucky and America forward. So those are like the 3 points that I'm a minister, so I can't help it. I always have 3 points, but those are the things that we frame up the No More Mitch movement with.
I'm a sucker for internal rhyme, so I am with you 100% on that one. That's great. So what is the No More Mitch campaign gonna be doing over the next 4 months? How are you guys to get rid of Mitch?
Well, the No More Mitch movement. Right now, we're in the phase of gathering folks to the movement. We have a field-oriented campaign which we're having to kind of monitor as we go right now. We have just started out with our field and data director, Laurent Besley. He's making some calls and trying to get a feel for where a lot of the people are that are part of our target audience, if you will. Starting on Sunday, we will also begin to embark upon doing some manner of field work starting in Fayette County, and we will continue that work on to spread out to some of the other counties across the state where we have some volunteers that have a desire to work, and we will certainly concentrate in areas where we have identified at the precinct level where the greatest number of potential voters. At this stage, we don't know who we will be voting for, but the voters that will certainly be voting against Mitch McConnell, we've identified where those individuals are in higher concentrations at the precinct level, and particularly where there's some more room, the greatest room for growth. And so we're going to be targeting a lot of our canvassing and field effort around those spaces, trying to be mindful of social distancing and being masked and following CDC type guidelines. But then also we're going to do a targeted digital campaign directed at those same voters across the state, which for the most part are in like 750 some odd precincts.
So it's basically a turnout strategy where you're looking to find the folks who, if you get them to the polls, they'll do the right thing. But it's a question of, will they make it, right?
Will they make it? And I think with the election that we have coming up, one candidate, probably there's more of a natural inclination that a lot of the voters we're targeting. I would just say if Charles Booker ends up being the nominee, a lot of the folks that will be targeting that job will probably get a little bit easier. And we're not just doing it around racial lines so much as really trying to target the voters, as you've mentioned, that if they get out and vote, we have a good idea of who they're going to vote for. So some of those districts look like precincts look like precincts in the west end of Louisville on the north side of Lexington, but they're dispersed out across the state, and they're very diverse in terms of the various demographics that you'll find in these precincts.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good intel. And it kind of goes into the next question of what do you think it will take to get critical masses of people across the Commonwealth to get Mitch out?
Well, I think that it's a number of things. One, it's going to be crucial that we have as many personal conversations with the people that are inclined not to vote, sometimes even in a presidential year. People that didn't vote, let's say in the 2016 race, you got to focus a lot of your attention and energy in that space among people that you think agree with you or have basis for believing will agree with you, but they just, whether they're registered Democrats or for whatever reason, based on where they're living, what have you, that there's a good basis for thinking that they do probably agree with us. They just may not see the utility of voting. So you got to have a lot of those conversations. And then you've got to continue to keep the connection. We've seen what Charles Booker has been able to do. He's run an excellent, extraordinary campaign considering where he was a month ago to where he is now. But you've got to understand that a lot of the energy that he tapped into was based on the social unrest in the country right now. And so you've got to find a way. And if Amy McGrath is the nominee, her campaign has to find a way to connect with that sentiment and to engage with that sentiment, to continue to be the candidate that speaks to the need for some change. Mitch McConnell, or better yet, the House passed a police reform bill, I think maybe over the weekend or late last week, and it's sitting in the Senate like so many things do. Well, the nominee is going to have to press that and point out, see, this is just another example of McConnell's obstructionism and how he's out of touch with what the people are demanding and calling for and needing. So it's going to take some of all of that.
That's great. And what do you think? What are your thoughts on this primary? You think it's going to leave us more prepared to ditch Mitch in November?
Well, I'm one of those people. I do believe, generally speaking, though sometimes primaries can be uncomfortable, particularly when they get contested and they get down to the wire. Sometimes they can even get a little bit nasty. But I'm one of those people that feel like candidates, and data seems to back up that candidates tend to actually do better in the general election when they have been vetted through a competitive primary process. So all in all, I think it still lends itself to some opportunity. But I think the greater challenge, if Booker is to win, then I think everything just kind of moves on almost seamlessly in some ways, I believe. But because I think the McGrath voter is probably tends to be more of the I'm going to vote in every election no matter what. Whereas when you get into the grassroots and the more progressive spaces, you do find some folks that aren't necessarily that inclined to necessarily vote for somebody they don't particularly see aligning themselves with them, even if they're maybe the better of two choices. So there's going to be a lot of work that still needs to be done if there's a need for Booker's folks to move over toward Amy, I think. So we'll see if that's even necessary here in the next how many
we'll
hours
find out tomorrow morning,
maybe about
right?
18, 16 hours.
Yeah. Well, hey, any final words you want to leave our viewers with?
I would encourage you, check us out at, we've got two programs that we're rolling out simultaneously. One is the No More Mitch movement. The thing about the People's Campaign, we have our website at campaignforpeople.com, but whenever we have a project going on, we go ahead and put up a website pertaining to that. So, if you're interested in the Senate race, go to nomoremitch.com and you will find some information about it. You can even see right there on the homepage how you can sign up to work with us, and you can even identify where you want to work. And then parenthetically, we also have another program, the Bigger Than Bevin initiative. The problems we have in Frankfort are bigger than Matt Bevin, and so we're working on some state legislative races as well. And so if you were to visit biggerthanbevin.com, you can see how you could volunteer and participate and get engaged in that as well. So thank you all for having me. Love to talk about this stuff. Can talk about it anytime. Don't hesitate to call on me again.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Reverend Williams. And I think we'll definitely turn to you. You mentioned Laurent. Laurent and I go back to Amy's congressional campaign. We definitely understand the value of field organizing and the importance of some smart, targeted grassroots efforts to get people to the polls. And so we're definitely, we're with you on that in lockstep, and we'll be encouraging, anyone who's watching this live stream to get involved, right? As much as possible in the next 4 months. Whether it's the candidate you are passionate about that wins or not, we know that Mitch is horrible, and Mitch is gotta go. So that's that's our kind of primary focus, and I'm very excited to hear about your campaigns. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you all.
All right,
To
have a
keep
great
on
evening.
pressing the issue. Have a great evening.
Absolutely. All right, so we're bringing back Nate, and I wanted to check in. I don't know if we've had any donations yet, but I wanted to encourage you, if you like the live stream, support us. If you want to see it, glitch free, which I mean, I'm not gonna make any promises, but I think it'll definitely be higher production values if we hit that fundraising goal that we've got. That's $1,000 a week, and whatever you can do is going to be helpful. $5, $50, $100, whatever you can do is going to absolutely add up and give us the resources we need to go big over the next 4 months. Right? It's going to take all of us pitching in to make sure that we do not get saddled with 6 more years of Moscow Mitch. Whew. All right. So anyway, if you want to make a donation, do it now. I'm sorry. I think I might have muted Nate. Nate, try it again.
So the pitch is make us glitch free so we can make you Mitch free.
Nice. That is it. Oh my gosh. So speaking of catchy slogans, what do you got? What do you got in the pipe, Nate? I've heard tell that there might be something coming our way soon.
I've been slaving over a hot computer, trying to get my anti-Mitch McConnell song done, and I think it's just about done. I shared it with a larger group today, so for a little bit of independent listening. And then if it's okay, then it's time to work on a little video. But I think it's very catchy, and it's kind of it moves right along.
That's exciting. I'm very excited to hear what you've cooked up in your home studio there. Any final thoughts from the panel, the narrow heads you guys want to share before we head out of here? Crystal, you got anything?
I think we just all need to go out, knock some doors, and get him out this year. I think it's what fans hate. And if we can't knock doors, do some lip drops.
Yep. Phone calls.
Yep.
COVID-free phone calls. That's definitely an option. Hands, but we'll give you phone numbers. And then I did want to tease. So next week we're going to be joined by Afton Ben, who is the regional organizer for Indivisible, and she is going to be sharing with us. She's an amazing organizer. I was on this Indivisible rural organizing, video stream thing this weekend, and they had Trey Crowder, the liberal redneck comedian, on as their kind of keynote, because he's from rural Tennessee, and he talked about kind of his people and how they view politics, and really funny and informative. She put that together. She's got a great track record of organizing for change, and I think we're going to hear from her about what their project looks like for their 10 targeted Senate races. So they're going to be bringing tools in. The great thing about affiliating with Indivisible is not only can we process your donation, hint, hint, but also they've got amazing tools like text peer texting, so we'll be able to text other voters in those 10 targeted districts and targeted states. There'll be phone banking. If you've used Hub Dialer on any your volunteer efforts, we'll have that available to call into Kentucky voters. So there's some really cool tools to do that kind of grassroots organizing and field organizing in a safe fashion. But yeah, I'm with you, Crystal. I think lip drops are safe. I think actually 6 feet away with a mask, you can canvas. It's definitely could do, as we are opening. I think stage 3 started today here in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So a lot of the restrictions have lifted. But all right, so one final plug. Go use the hashtag before you log off your computer. Go to Mitch's website, go to your own page and share Moscow Mitch Monday. We got to get rid of Mitch. You can use the catchy slogans that Clark had. Mitch is the hitch for moving our nation forward. Mitch is for the rich. Mitch is for. Did you say Mitch? Was that the middle one? Mitch is for Mitch. Maybe.
Yes, Mitch is for Mitch.
Right. Yeah.
It's true. Mitch is not for us. That's
Yeah.
what McGarvey said. The Democratic Senate Democrat leader when he was here a couple weeks ago. It's plain and simple. Mitch is not for us. He is not helping our state. He is helping those, the elite, the corporate interests. That's what he does. That's why we got to get rid of him. So, at any rate, thanks so much, folks. Appreciate you spending some of your evening with us. Or whenever you watch the recording. Good morning. I don't know when you're watching it, but I do hope that you take action. Don't just watch us, but take action. Share the memes with your friends. Amplify the message. Everything we told you about and kind of Mitch in the news. This breaking stuff about how Mitch is failing us. That's information that should get out every single day. Thanks. Thanks for being a part of the Mitch McConnell Retirement Committee. Have a love.
Bye, y'all.
We're going to bring a little bit of our catchy song over. Have a good night.